morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Sam Vassallo, joined by Tim Diacono, and here are today's headlines. So, Joseph Muscat tells Maria Efimova, return to Malta and testify in my libel cases. A Gozoton youth opens up about being gay and religious on the sister island. Meanwhile, an alleged aggressor behind the Mosta knife attack turns himself into police. Malta's bar owners react to latest COVID-19 aid as forced closures continue. And lastly, Lovin Malta files a historic case to declare propaganda by political party stations unconstitutional. Now, today is a special episode as we have a guest, Ian Camilleri, architect behind the DHI Periti, and he will be talking about the project to turn Floriana green. Let's get on with the first headline, shall we?
Yeah, so former Prime Minister Joseph Muscat was in court yesterday to testify in 3 old libel cases that he instituted around 4 years ago. And the defendants, lawyers, the people accused are Matthew Galizia and 2 net journalists. The defendants summoned Maria Efimova, the former Pilates Bank employee, as a witness. Now, Maria Efimova is living in Greece, and she's also wanted in Malta and has been charged with perjury. Now, the defendants are asking for her to testify remotely, but Joseph Muscat said no. If you want, I want you to testify, but I want you to testify physically. I want you to come to Malta here and testify in court, and while you're here, also face answer for the actual charges against you, the perjury charges against you, which obviously concern him and the e-grant case. So yes, 4 years in the making, still, we don't yet have any conclusion. Obviously, there have been a lot of doubts surrounding Efimova's testimony, particularly since she raised €15,000 from the public and hasn't exactly been transparent with what happened to the money.
Indeed, just to remind you, Efimova rose to prominence in 2017 when she told now assassinated journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia that the Panama company e-grant allegedly belonged to Michelle Muscat, the wife of Joseph Muscat. Now, keep following Lovin Malta for more updates about this case. Meanwhile, a positive story. A Gozoton youth has opened up about being gay and religious on the sister island. So basically, he realized that he was gay at 17. He was a member of St. George's Basilica, a religious community, and felt very conflicted as to whether he can be his true, authentic self, embracing his sexuality and also his spirituality. Luckily, he's been able to do both. Now he feels accepted in the community. He's also the president of LGBT Gozo, and has even done an interview with St. George's Basilica about, embracing his sexuality and his spirituality. And I think it's a very good testimony to, 21st century Catholicism, where, you can embrace your sexuality, you can be openly gay, and also follow the teachings of the church.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when sometimes you hear some pretty negative stories about religion. There was a case recently, but behind the scenes, it's great to see that there are people who actually do not only like the church, but feel accepted within different religious communities despite being gay, which is something that the church doesn't traditionally accept, to be fair. Moving on, the alleged aggressor behind a pretty heinous attack in Mosta last week has turned himself into the police. So the aggressor, a 29-year-old Syrian national, had attacked a certain Lamir Mohammed, also Syrian, in Mosta last week. Actually stabbed him in the neck, very brutal. Thankfully, Lamir didn't die. He managed somehow to drive himself to Matadei, bleeding from the neck. And this guy was on the run for a while, but he handed himself in. So at least, Lamir's family doesn't have to worry anymore. Obviously, this case hit the headlines in a particular way because Lamir said that he believed the attack was religiously motivated. So again, back to religion, but he believed that. There's doubts about this, but I think even the Imam actually then spoke about this case as well, right?
Indeed. So the Imam, which is the leader of the Islamic community in Malta, has condemned all forms of violence. He said it has no place in Islam. I think it's super important that religious leaders, step up and speak and communicate with their own community when such terrible cases come in an effort to make sure that it doesn't actually reflect that community. I mean, recently, there's a court case going on right now with two priests allegedly raping an older boy, and the Korea has come out to condemn all forms of violence as well. So I think both are doing a good job in making sure that people know that all forms of violence don't belong in religion. On to our next story. Malta's bar owners have reacted to the latest COVID-19 aid as forced closures continue. So Lovin Malta has spoke to bar owners around the islands about how they feel about the latest package to support them. Essentially, they're going to receive a one-off payment of €2,700. That's supposed to help replenish their stock. That's probably expired. As you know, they initially closed in October. They were supposed to open again in December. That didn't happen. They were supposed to open again in January. That didn't happen. And it looks like they're going to open at the end of the first half of the year. So a lot, unfortunately, believe that these measures are frankly a joke. They feel like they're being laughed at. And they feel truly that they've been the scapegoat of this pandemic because while they're closed, there are some restaurants that are finding loopholes and are acting like bars, reaping double the benefits, at their expense. One even told us, was it all worth it to close our businesses down? He had to move out of his house because he couldn't afford the rent anymore. And meanwhile, COVID-19 cases are still in triple digits.
Yeah, obviously they're absolutely right, and it's important to note that when businesses are made to close down because of the pandemic, there are real lives and livelihoods on the line. And it's no joke. It's no joke to just tell someone you have to close down, especially when you tell, you leave them hanging every single month, wondering whether they'll be able to literally make a living again. And okay, even though the government is paying the wage supplement, it's nowhere near enough considering how expensive some of the rates are. Some landlords are more reasonable than others, but it's a very sad situation for them. And unfortunately, some have already closed down, and more will probably close down in the coming months as well at this rate. On to our final story. Lovin Malta has officially filed a historic case to declare that the propaganda broadcast by Net and One is unconstitutional. So basically what this case is saying is that the Constitution states that the Constitution is the highest law in the land, and that this states that all broadcasting must be impartial. However, a law in 1991, the broadcasting law, says that impartiality can be assessed across all private media companies, basically the political party stations, as a whole. So therefore it means that one of the stations can air propaganda as long as the other one airs propaganda from the other side. Our case is that this is not it's unconstitutional, and that both stations should be obliged to follow some kind of impartiality in the way they broadcast the news.
Yeah, I think it's frankly ridiculous that you can argue that they can sort of cancel each other out if they're both spewing propaganda. More news on that. The Daphne Caruana Galizia Foundation has officially endorsed the court case, and Times of Malta became the first newspaper to endorse the action. If you want to learn more about this action that Lovin Malta is taking, you can find it all at kashaturi.com. Now on to our guest, Ian Camilleri will come and talk to us about the project to turn Floriana green right after this video. So, welcome back and welcome Ian Camilleri Cassar. You're part of DHI Periti and you're one of 4 architects who proposed to turn Floriana green back in 2014. Do you want to go ahead and explain your project to us?
Yes. First of all, thank you for inviting us. I'm here to represent the four architects. The project started, our offices are based in Floriana on St. Anne Street. And the project originally had started, obviously, I've been going to Floriana now for the last 13 years. And going there every single day and looking at St. Anne Street, I realized that St. Anne Street is a beautiful street. If you look at the streets, I think it's one of the most beautiful streets we have in Malta. If you look at the streetscape, it's a continuation from beginning to end. But unfortunately, over the years, we just let it fade away. It just became, it's just black, heavy traffic. It was the top most polluted street in Malta, because I think now it's been taken over by Aldo Moro, to be honest. And it was a time where Valletta started booming, but Floriana was always kept in silence. For more Maltese, it was seen as a road. You know, and Floriana wasn't St. Anne Street. So St. Anne Street, Floriana was originally designed by engineer Piero Floriani, who was given this project to take Floriana and develop it into a new suburb town. Okay, and St. Anne Street was the place where the community used to meet. St. Anne Street wasn't, for example, as wide as it is today. It was not made for roads. It was made for people to sell, for markets. Then, in fact, there is a Market Street passing, crossing it parallel. The idea started because I said, what if this street is transformed into a green strip? But obviously, with all the problems that come with it, where are you going to pass the cars? Mm-hmm. So I said, it could be very easy if you were to put a tunnel. Usually, the access into Valletta will remain exactly the same, but you're creating a pedestrian area on top where people can, and you're giving it back to Floriana, where people can gather, all right, and you're not disturbing the traffic. And the idea started from there. And when I started thinking about this, I started saying, Malta, this was in 2015, Malta could be on the map of a case study for other European countries to change. One, as I said, one of the most highly polluted streets, okay, and turn it into a social green space where you give it back to its people. So we had to delve more into it. We took Floriana, and Floriana, from its title, the Garden City, people, for example, don't know about this, but Floriana, I think, is one of the greenest towns in Malta. And it's full of gardens at every corner, every 4 corners. So, and even, for example, the way we designed it, people maybe don't really know, is the lines in St. Anne Street are the symbol of you connecting the gardens together. So it's a community connection. Mm-hmm. And that is where the concept came out.
So you're sort of like staying true to the initial plans.
Exactly. We want to turn, because unfortunately, Floriana, I didn't usually see it like that, but going there every day, I started to realize how beautiful it is. The architecture of it, the buildings. What's the difference between Floriana and Valletta? You know, Valletta is beautiful, but Floriana has beautiful buildings as well, beautiful palazzos. And I said, this could be, it could be part of the entrance into our capital city. So we took it holistically, and then you have to see what we have today. We have the cruise liners, okay? So if you go transform St. Anne Street into a green strip, you are going to create an economical boost. So how is this going to work? You have the cruise liners that stop at the Valletta waterfront, which is not Valletta, it's Floriana, okay? And you can create another lift that was created because the lift on the Baraka was done, let's call it recently. Before, the tourists from the cruise liners used to stay walking up or getting a taxi or a horse to go to Valletta, and everyone is walking up this road to go to Valletta. So why don't they create another lift? I mean, it can be done. You go up into one of the gardens overlooking the Grand Harbour of Floriana, and you start from St. Anne's Street, and you have this strip that leads you into the capital city, which is a noble capital city at the end of the day.
So it's a sort of like a win-win for everyone, really. You know, there's
I
community,
think it is a
boom.
win-win situation, and also, as you said, for everyone. But I'm trying to think, even for Europe, you're turning a strip that was full of CO2 emissions into a country's benefit from everywhere, socially, economically, and also for health reasons.
Awesome. So, I mean, it's been over now 5-6 years since you've initially proposed this proposal.
Yes, I have.
What has the response been from the government in particular?
The response from the government, I have to be honest, was also always positive, but it stopped there. I mean, it's a nice idea, and it stops there, okay? And we were knocking on many people's doors, but sometimes, unfortunately, and I have to say unfortunately, we always do things later. Like, we like to learn from other countries rather than being innovative, do it, and say, and the other countries can say, look what Malta created. Now, lately, this St. Anne's Street project has exploded again because we have seen Champs-Élysées, they're going to do it, and Barcelona. And then all of a sudden, you know, might be a good idea to do it as well.
6 years later.
So, and at least from a positive side, I'm happy that things are now moving. They would like to see it through. They would like to see it through. Obviously, they're waiting for the studies, which are extremely important studies, to see if it could be done or not. But again, from an architectural point of view, if you really want to do something, it can be done. So if these studies are going to be negative, I would say, okay, there's a shortcut. Because in life, if you want to do something, it can be done. There could be water. You can do it. At an expense, but you can do it.
I mean, we've already forked out 700 million for our streets, right? Why can't we turn Malta green? Talking about, you know, turning Malta green, do you think there are other places in Malta or streets that deserve this, you know, green makeover, this treatment? Can you think of any?
Another street that I look highly at, and obviously again is disregarded, is Hamroon, the main street of Hamroon. Issa, again, you don't, to create a public space, you don't just take a street and say, okay, you know, let's paint it green. You have to look at it holistically. Now, if they're looking at Floriana, there has to be a form of continuation from the design that's going to come out of Floriana. And how you're going to manage to continue this strip into Hamroon. It doesn't mean you remove the cars, because obviously people get quite shocked. But there has to be a continuation. Hamroon is a very nice street. And also Zabar, Hompesh Road.
Okay.
That needs, that can take some.
Well, hopefully
makeover.
one day all the main streets of Malta could be.
Exactly. You're speaking about main streets, for example. Abroad, case in point in Italy, there are times that the main street is closed for traffic. They close it for 3 hours. Why? So these are closed, and the community goes out, and they just meet in the street. But that is extremely healthy from every benefit.
And speaking of this, you know, it's sort of pedestrian first instead of car first, as was in Amsterdam. You know, it was focused on cars, and then they, I don't know, revitalized it, and now it's basically for pedestrians.
Amsterdam is a perfect example.
Why do you think, though, these open green spaces are important? If you're trying to convince someone of why Malta needs these kind of projects.
a green space. Again, going back to the engineer Pietro Floriani, you can't just tell me, listen, I have this site, this plot, and it's an open space. It has to be planned. It has to be a place where when you go with your children, family, old, elderly people, they have to feel welcome. It's usually in the middle of a village. It could be on the side of the village, but it has to connect. It has to make people connect. If you take St. Anne Street, for example, we want to connect back Floriana into one village. Issa, if you have open spaces, there are three main benefits to it. There's the social benefit, there's the economic benefit, and there's the health benefit. Social benefit is that people meet more, they socialize more. If you don't have open spaces, they're going to stay at home. For example, an example of this that personally I felt it, unfortunately, when COVID started in Malta, they closed down the gardens. Okay? I felt that a lot. Because I was like, okay, I'm going out. I have kids, I'm going out. I have nowhere to go. So that was a case study. They are really important. Yeah, places that you can relate to. So you have the social benefit. You have the health benefit. Again, what I'm saying about the gardens, that you go out, you meet people, mental health. If there are open spaces, not even by promoting it, people will start doing more sports, and that helps a lot. Economic, it's proven that places with well-planned green areas, property value goes up, and also, why? Because also it's linked to tourism. So you're going to have tourists coming to these places. All of a sudden, commercial outlets are changing, residential places are changing, and it will uplift the area.
Well, I hope to see this actually become a reality for Malta and see more of these kind of projects sprouting up. That was all from us here at Lovin Malta. Be sure to follow us for the latest updates in news and memes and everything in between, and to read also about your Floriana green project. Have a day full of lovin'.